So far this week, we have ranked the top captains, head coaches, and now it's time to do the Carolina Hurricanes Mount Rushmore on a Thursday edition of Locked On Hurricanes.
You're Locked On Hurricanes, your daily podcast on the Carolina Hurricanes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to a Thursday edition of Locked On Hurricanes, your team every day, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Thank you to the Everydayer for making this your first listen of the day. 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, talking everything about your Carolina Hurricanes. I am your host, Zach Martin. I am the Carolina Hurricanes beat writer over at the Hockey Writers. I'm also the columnist of the Chicago Wolves Weekly over there at THW as well. I'm the host of the Surgecast, which is a weekly Carolina Hurricanes podcast, along with all of my dudes here at Locked On Hurricanes. Got a fun show for you guys. As I said at the start of the program, we are doing the Carolina Hurricanes Mount Rushmore. Now we're seeing who are the best of the best, the cream of the crop in terms of the Carolina Hurricanes of just players. And we're doing the entire franchise for this first one. And maybe if this goes really well, I might just do positional ones. So we're going to see how this goes. But before we jump into the Mount Rushmore, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. As playoffs wind down, or since they're actually done with it now, thanks to no more hockey, the sport stops sporting like we want them to. Well, yeah, pretty much. But this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone, every day, all summer long. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Now, like I said, we are going to jump into the Mount Rushmore, and it depends on how everyone likes this Mount Rushmore. I might do all the positions as well, not just the overall aspect of the franchise. And I'm going to get this one out of the way, just that way I know people are going to pray. I'm curious to see how everyone's going to feel about this one. Ron Francis did not make the Mount Rushmore. I know a lot of people are going to be upset about that because, yes, he is retired with the Carolina Hurricanes. And for me, he played 5 2/3 or 3/4 of a season because he did get traded in his last year to the Toronto Maple Leafs. Technically, he was with the franchise for 16 years, but a bulk of that was with the Hartford Whalers. So overall, you're talking a little less than 6 seasons with the Hurricanes, and I just feel like it's one of those things where, yeah, you could give it to Ron Francis as a slam dunk answer if you're talking about the Mount Rushmore of the Carolina Hurricanes, but he had less than 6 seasons, and I think a lot of guys that do make the Mount Rushmore do have a longer longevity with the team than what Ron Francis did. So, yeah, I left Ron Francis off the Mount Rushmore. If you have him on, then, yeah, so more respect to you. I completely understand why you would put Ron Francis there. But for me, I don't have Ron Francis, and basically this whole episode is going to be explaining why these guys, I believe, got in over, Ronnie Francis. Now, like I said, I will give him an honorable mention for the fact of the legacy he left with the Hurricanes. But overall, I just don't think he's a guy that you put on a list of a Mount Rushmore of the Carolina Hurricanes where, yeah, he was your first, he was a captain, led you to your first ever Stanley Cup, but he played less than 6 seasons with the team. And I think a lot of other guys on this list has a better longevity and have done more, honestly. And that's just how it is. If you agree with me, cool. If not, I mean, hey, everyone's got their personal preferences on who their Mount Rushmore would be. So this is really no particular order of how we're going to do this in terms of the guys, but I'm going to just go, for me, it's going to be easier. We're going to go from the net to the center of the ice. So we're going from goal to defense to forwards and stuff like that in terms of how we're just going to progress through this. So the first guy we got to talk about, I mean, it's kind of a no-brainer if we're talking about goaltenders. And for me, it is Cam Ward is one of the guys on the Mount Rushmore. He played 13 years with the Carolina Hurricanes. He started 568, played in 668, 318 wins, 244 losses, 84 ties or overtime losses, career save percentage of .909, a goals against average of 2.70, and he does lead the franchise in shutouts with 27. and he played in it over 38,436 minutes. And funny enough, too, he's actually tied for points with Sean Burke with 12s, and he also does carry 44 penalty minutes, which puts him fourth the whole time for the goaltenders. And for me, it's kind of a no-brainer, especially the fact that if you grew up with the Hurricanes at any point, especially if you're one of those fans that saw them win the Cup, and the fact of what he did as a rookie going in, into his first playoffs, plays pretty well for the most part, all things considered. He gets into the Cup final, he plays out of his mind and has one of the greatest saves of all time, which for me is the save. Some people might define the save a little bit differently compared to others, but for me, it's the Fernando Persani save in Game 7 where he absolutely just stones him with the chicken wing. And I've told the story before. I'm in the top right corner, and I'm on that side of the ice where he made the save. I'm looking over his right shoulder, and that's where he does on Persani. Absolutely stones him. And that's basically the save of Game 7. And if you're talking about other goalies, I would say it's kind of tough if you're gonna put a goalie on the Mount Rushmore list. Like, who else would you put up there? You could maybe say Arturs Irbe, because he did play 6 seasons with the team's got 130 wins. That's someone you could put up there. I mean, Frederick Anderson's been playing pretty well for the Hurricanes. We only got 3 seasons under his belt. You could probably say maybe Kevin Weeks. You're talking 3 seasons, get 39 wins. Pierre Kachekov's playing really well right now, though. He's coming into his third, 3 seasons in. He's got 38 wins. He's locked up for the next 3 years. So, yeah, you could say maybe Pierre Kachekov down the line, if possible. But, I mean, the only other guys you can really think of that could maybe make a run for Cam Ward is Arturs Irbe. But, honestly, Archer's played 6 seasons with the Hurricanes. Like I said, did get 130 wins in 309 games. Does have a goals against average of a 2.49 and a save percentage of .906. But if you're looking overall at your goaltenders, just as a franchise as a whole, I think you have to give it to Cam Ward. And I know a lot of people are going to probably give Cam grief just because of like, oh, well, he wasn't that great in the dark ages. He stayed too long, this, that, or the other. But, I mean, good on him for sticking with the team for as long as he did. Yeah, you kind of wish he played his entire career in Carolina outside of the 1 season he played with the Chicago Blackhawks. But, I mean, you're talking about a guy who stayed in Carolina, has a winery. He's on that Carolina Hurricanes Hall of Fame for a reason for what he did, and that's just going beyond, the 2016 Stanley Cup run. He's been in Carolina his whole life. He spent a really long time of his career with the Carolina Hurricanes, and that was with a lot of bad teams when you hit the dark age times. I mean, you still see him, you do the run in 2009 to the Eastern Conference Final and stuff like that, and just being able to be that guy, and then just unfortunately didn't really have a good backup to give him some rest. He played like I said, you look at the minutes he's played, he played over 38,000 minutes. The next best is Arturs Irbe at 17,000. That's him playing 6 seasons. Cam Ward played 13. You're talking a bunch of minutes for a guy who's the longest tenured goalie by double, essentially. So if you're talking goalies, it has to be Cam Ward, and I really don't see how you don't put him on the Mount Rushmore for what he did in the Cup run, what he's done overall in his career, and just being the guy in net for the Hurricanes, especially during the dark ages. And it's almost like you kind of wish he was around when the team got really, really good. And, who knows how would have happened if, Rod Brind'amour came in sooner as a head coach instead of 2018-19. What happens if Cam Ward's there with Roddy as your head coach, and maybe you get a better roster in front of him? Who really knows? But, yeah, for me, it's kind of a no-brainer in who you pick if you're going goalie-wise. It's got to be Cam Ward, and he's the first one you got to think of when you're putting on the Mount Rushmore. That's not a player. Skater, really, but I don't know. Let me know what you think. Do you think there's another goalie that could make a case? Like I said, Arturs Irbe is the only other one that's possible. Maybe down the road, if Piotr hits 10, 11, 12 seasons with the Hurricanes, gets a couple cups, maybe, kind of makes some noise, maybe to put himself there at some point. Who knows? It's a possibility. But as of right now, gotta go Cam Ward. And that's just for the fact of what he's done as a goalie and how much he's meant to the franchise for being the second, like in the top 3 of longest tenured guys with the franchise that is just strictly like Carolina Hurricanes and not like Hartford Whalers with Ronnie Francis and stuff like that. Of course, I know Eric Stahl and a bunch of other guys left too, but Cam Ward played a good, like he pretty much played 99.9% of his career with the Hurricanes. So it makes sense why he's on the list. So that is our first player that is on the Carolina Hurricanes Mount Rushmore. We're going to go over number 2 and number 3. Like I said, this isn't really in any order in particular. It's just how we're going to do it. So we're going to have the next 2 guys in segment 2 of who are going to make the Mount Rushmore. And we'll go over that here in a second on a Thursday edition of Locked On Hurricanes. All right, guys, we got to talk about FanDuel. And I know, just like me, you guys love sports. And we love them so much, we never want them to stop, especially hockey. But since we don't officially have any more hockey right now, we're in the dog days of summer. Unfortunately, there's no really much of hockey going on. But we do have NASCAR, golf, NWSL, WNBA, stuff like that. So the sports are still happening, and especially baseball too. And with FanDuel, it lets us keep the sports going whenever we want, and that's by just us opening up the FanDuel app and making a bet anytime we want. And with FanDuel, this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone, every day, all summer long. So head on over to FanDuel.com and start making the most out of your summer. FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. Welcome back to segment 2 of Locked On Hurricanes, your team every day. So back in segment 1, we went over Cam Ward and why he is more than deserving to be on the Carolina Hurricanes Mount Rushmore. And now we get to go to our number 2 guy who I believe should definitely be on this list. And it is none other than Eric Stahl. I mean, it's kind of a no-brainer for this guy as well. Joined the team in 2004. Of course, we had a lockout, comes in. Has the only 100-point season for the Carolina Hurricanes in the 2005-2006 season. Played 12 seasons with the team going to 2016 before he got traded. 909 games played with the Carolina Hurricanes. You wish he hit 1,000, but, 909 still pretty good for how many games he's already played and the effect of how long he's been playing after that, too. 322 goals, 453 assists for 775 points. Those points, second best in franchise history, only behind Ronnie Francis, is 1,175. And, of course, you're talking 16 years dating back to the Hartford Whaler times. Eric Stahl does have 678 penalty minutes in terms of goals. 201 came on even strength, 105 power play goals, 16 shorthanded, and 47 game winners. His total shot percentage his entire career, 10.6. In his time on ice, he logged over 18,381 minutes, which averages out to 20 minutes and 13 seconds with the Hurricanes. Now, in terms of goals, he is second on the team at 322, only behind Ron Francis' 382. Assist-wise, Eric Stahl is also second there with 453 compared to Ronnie's 793. So, overall, if you really look at how Eric Stahl is, it's kind of another no-brainer selection for the fact that you're talking the guy who's second in goals, assists, and points. And just looking at his total ice time, he leads by a good margin. Of course, the next guy is Jacob Slavin at 14,998. So I think it's going to be it's a foregone conclusion that Jacob Slavin's going to catch that total ice time. But talking about average time on ice right now, Eric Stahl and where he's at, he's actually, surprisingly enough, pretty far down the list. Of course, you're talking about a lot of defensemen who do chalk up a lot of minutes overall. But in terms of the forwards, he's got a pretty good number, all things considered. He's 24th all-time in franchise history in terms of minutes. Of course, Rod Brind'amour does beat him with 21:02 in average ice time. But if you're talking Mount Rushmore in terms of guys who should be on there, especially for the forward core, that's not Ron Francis. Like I said, he doesn't really make it for the fact that he had technically 5 2/3 seasons with the Hurricanes. For me, it's Eric Stahl. Just of what he's done. Like I said, 100 points, the only guy who get 100 points in a regular season, won a Stanley Cup, played with the Hurricanes for a very long time. And you're talking pretty much up to the somewhat end-ish or the middle range of the Dark Ages. So he played on a lot of bad Hurricanes teams. And just like Cam Ward, how do you think his career would have been if Rod Brind'amour was the head coach a lot sooner, along with Tom Dundon and Don Waddell were with the Hurricanes? Of course, they've been there for a while. At least with Don Waddell, he was there for a couple seasons before Eric Stahl left. But what would have been like now if you had guys like Cam Ward and Eric Stahl in a system that is right now with all the success that the Hurricanes have had? But, I mean, you're talking one of the top 3 longest tenured guys on the Hurricanes. Of course, his brother just hit 12 years to tie him. Cam Ward's, we already talked about how long he's been with the franchise, too. And by the end of it, Jacob Slavin's probably going to be the longest tenured guy in the Carolina Hurricanes in their history. But if you're talking forwards, it just makes sense why it's Eric Stahl. He's a name that everyone knows. He's beloved in Carolina. It just makes sense of why he makes the list, just because of him being on the Mount Rushmore. Just by the accolades alone, it just makes sense of why he's on there, just for the fact you're a Stanley Cup winner, 100-point season. Granted, he only made one All-Star, but of course, the All-Star things is beyond weird, and it just doesn't make any sense, but it is what it is. But for me, Eric Stahl should have gotten a lot more respect in terms of just the voting and stuff like that, because you look at where he was in this. I mean, Selke-wise, he's not really much of a Selke guy, but even in his 100-point season, I mean, he finished 4th in the Hart, and that was the best he's ever finished in that position. Other than that, you're talking 22nd, 23rd, 17th. So it's one of those things where it's weird, where you think of Eric Stahl as a guy who's really good offensively, but just for whatever reason never really got the respect necessarily that he should have in terms of his production. Like I said, you got a guy who's got over 770 points with the Hurricanes, but for whatever reason in normal regular seasons just couldn't get the votes and stuff like that. So it's one of those things. Now, the other guy we have to talk about, and this one is more of a recent selection. I could see where some people might not want to put him on the list just yet because of the fact that he's still currently playing for the Carolina Hurricanes. And for me, it's Sebastian Aho. Now, you could make the case for Jacob Slavin as well, and I do think that Jacob Slavin, when all things are said and done, will probably have a case to put himself on the Mount Rushmore for the Carolina Hurricanes. But for me, right now, Sebastian Aho is kind of made himself a guy to put on this list. Got drafted by the team. He's been, on the roster since 2017. 598 games played, which puts him 11th all time, and that's with missing some parts of a few seasons. But in terms of talking about goals, he's 3rd on the team at 254 already. He's not that far behind Eric Stahl's 322. I mean, he just passed Kevin Dineen this past year to get number 3 in terms of goals. Assist-wise, he passed Rod Brind'amour, who had 299, and he's at 303. He's only 150 assists back of Eric Stahl's 2nd, and he's only 690 back. He's only 490 back of Ron Francis's all-time assists. And then in terms of points, like I said, 557. He's not that far behind Eric Stahl's 775. And the crazy part is, too, Sebastian Aho, in terms of his plus-minus, 2nd all-time on the Carolina Hurricanes at 114. Next best to him was Teuvo Teravainen, who went back to the Chicago Blackhawks at 105. Brett Pesce is at 92. But the guy who's got the best plus-minus is Jacob Slavin at 151. Now, talking about goals, Sebastian Aho does have 174 even strength. Power play, he does have 63. He has 17 shorthanded goals, which is the best of all time for the Carolina Hurricanes already. He beat out Eric Stahl's 16. And in terms of game winners, he is 2nd on the team in game-winning goals with 55, only 2 behind Ron Francis, whose shooting percentage is pretty dang good as well, in terms of the fact that it's 15.2%, and his total time on ice right now for Sebastian Aho is 8th, 11,328 minutes of time on ice, and right now he averages just 18 minutes and 57 seconds. just for the fact of where he is in terms of third place in goals, points, and assists, second in game-winning goals behind Ron Francis, and the fact he's already logged over 11,000 minutes with the team. It's kind of a no-brainer that, like I said, just with the Eric Staal pick, Sebastian Aho right now is considerably one of the greatest Carolina Hurricanes, and he still has he's the fact that you still have a really long contract with him too that you just get to now deal with for another 8 seasons. I mean, when it's all said and done, I think you're going to see a guy who's probably going to make a case of having first in pretty much every category for the Carolina Hurricanes. Talking goals, points, assists. I think it's very doable with the assists. I know it's going to be kind of tough to catch, that number with Ron Francis, but all things considered, I think he has a really good chance to do that. He already leads in shorthanded goals. He's only 2 behind game winners, and if you look at his like playoff stats, he pretty much leads almost every playoff stat. And this kid is still 26. I mean, what more can you really ask out of Sebastian Aho for the fact that you're talking about a guy who is 26, pretty much he's going to be turning 27 here on the 26. I really don't know what more you can really ask out of this guy, because a lot of people are like, well, he's not a superstar. And no, he's a superstar. He is. Where he's at 8 years into a career, he's only put up that many points, or he already has a bunch of records for the Carolina Hurricanes. Yeah, it kind of makes sense why he's on the Mount Rushmore, and that's more of a recent pick. So I don't see why he wouldn't be on this list. I mean, already has a bunch of records. He's only going to keep breaking more of them as he goes along, because he's basically he's going to be a Carolina Hurricane for his entire career. And when it's all said and done, records are going to be in his name. He's going to pass Eric Staal for second in a bunch of those categories. He's going to pass the game-winning goal record already this upcoming season. He's only 2 behind. His shorthand goal total is going to jump into the 20s, and I don't think anyone's going to touch that anytime soon. So yeah, it's just like Eric Staal. How much he's a no-brainer right now. Any current guy you can really put on this Mount Rushmore list that's not Jacob Slavin, because like I said, Jacob Slavin could be one of those guys you can put there too. It's got to be Sebastian Aho, and it just makes sense why he's there. Not a lot of current guys can say they can be on this list right now outside of those two, but yeah, those are the 2 guys right now that could make this list. And one of them is definitely Sebastian Aho, and that's why he is on the list. So that'll wrap up our number 3 and our number 2 selections. Now we are going to talk about our last selection for the Carolina Hurricanes Mount Rushmore, but we're also going to talk about our honorable mentions as well, who just slightly missed the cut. And we'll talk about that here in a second on a Thursday edition of Locked On Hurricanes. Welcome back to segment 3 of Locked On Hurricanes, your team every day. Now we get to go to the honorable mentions of our Mount Rushmore list, and I think this is going to be where it's going to get very, very interesting of like, okay, who's going to make it out of the honorable mentions? Because you can think of maybe Jeff O'Neill, some might say Jeff Skinner, not really, but you never know. Ray Whitney, Sammy Kapanen, a lot of good names. For me, one of them, we're going to go with the forwards, and we're going to move back to the net again. My first honorable selection is actually going to be Eric Cole. Joined the team in 2002, went through 2011, played 9 seasons with the Hurricanes, 557 games played, 168 goals, 195 assists, and 363 points, which puts him 13th all-time for the Hurricanes. He was a +6 for his career. He just logged over a minute over 10,000 with the Hurricanes at a 12.8 shooting percentage and just averaged 17 minutes and 57 seconds of average time on ice. Now, I know what a lot of people are going to be thinking. Why Eric Cole? Well, he is 12th on the team in goals. He also has put himself 15th on the team in assists. And like I said, his points-wise, he has him 13th. You're talking about a guy who had a pretty long career with the Carolina Hurricanes. He did have 9 seasons, was a Stanley Cup winner. For me, it kind of makes sense to why he makes the honorable mentions list. he had a really decent career with the Carolina Hurricanes. Still in the area, really great personality. Won Stanley Cup with the team. He was a big boost to the playoff team when when a lot of guys got hurt in the playoffs, and he came back from a neck injury that he suffered thanks to Orpik. But he came back, was a big contributor. He was a big contributor on the BBC line when you had Brind'amour, Battaglia, and him together. The real ones know how good that line was. And I just think if you're talking about honorable mentions, one of those guys you got to mention, I know this might be a shock to some people, but I think Eric Cole could be an honorable mention just for the fact of how much he contributed to the team on, what he kind of had was a career where, there were some injuries later on that kind of, didn't help out as much, but he was clutch when he needed to be. And that's someone who, went through, like I said, the BBC line with Rod, went up to 2011 with the team, was on another cup, final, you're talking, Eastern Conference final appearance, and someone who did pretty well, all things considered, top 15 in a lot of points categories, logged over 10,000 minutes with the team. So I think it's a solid honorable mention, all things considered, when you look at it that way. The other one I want to talk about, and this is the defenseman, that is going to be Jacob Slavin. Now, obviously, this one makes more sense of why Jacob Slavin is. 49 goals, 223 assists for 272 points. Been with the team since 2016 when he started. He was drafted a lot earlier. He's done all this in 665 games, and he the best plus minus ever at 151. Now, he has logged over 14,998 minutes. And now, if you're talking total ice time, that is second best on the team, only behind Eric Stahl. And his average time on ice is an astounding 22 minutes and 33 seconds now. But here's the thing, though. That's ninth best on the team behind Steve Chason, Sean Hill, Justin Falk, Andre Sakura, Kevin Hatcher. Hatcher played only one season with the team, but still logged over 23 minutes. Joe Corville, Danny Markov, who played one season with the team as well, almost logged 23 minutes and 39 seconds. And then, of course, Yoni Pikkinen, who averaged over 25 minutes. But as we all know, Jacob Slavin is going to be considered he's going to be the greatest Carolina Hurricane of all time. He's already going to hold a bunch of records when it's all said and done. And I just think for the fact of, he just signed a contract extension. And that starts after this upcoming season in 25-26. So you're talking 9 seasons more of Jacob Slavin where he's going to put up more records and solidify himself to where, he's already won the Lady Byng twice. I think he can win a couple more Lady Byngs, and hopefully we see a, Norris at some point as well. So as, while Sebastian Aho is currently on the Mount Rushmore, you can also make the case for Jacob Slavin if you want to put a defenseman there. Because right now, I can tell you right now, there's no defenseman currently on the Mount Rushmore. So if you want to make sure that all 4 positions were taken care of, I think Jacob Slavin easily is on this list for the Mount Rushmore. So that's why he's a really close honorable mention where he's like that, let's say 4B to Sebastian Aho's 4A if you had to rank him. That's how close Jacob Slavin is. And I think that when it's all said and done in terms of a career, I think Jacob Slavin can easily put himself on the Mount Rushmore list. So that's why, for me, he's an honorable mention. Now, the last honorable mention I'm going to talk about, this is actually going back to the net, and I've already mentioned him earlier on the podcast. And we are going to be talking about 130, which is second best win total behind Cam Ward. 122 losses, 44 ties or overtime losses. And he also had a 906 save percentage and 249 goals against, 20 shutouts, played over 17,000 minutes for the Hurricanes. And he did have 4 points in his career and also had 46 penalty minutes. If you're talking about a guy who stood on his head very early for the Carolina Hurricanes, especially during the 2002 Cup run, it's Archer Zerbe. You saw what he did with the San Jose Sharks even before he went to Carolina, and he comes to Carolina, does the exact same thing for them as well. You're talking about the one of the best underrated goalies of all time. Like, the Latvian goalie is just absolutely insane of how good he was. He definitely brought that old school 80s, 90s, flip around, doing the gymnastics and the windmill saves and stuff like that. But that's just how good Archer Zerbe was. And you're talking about a time where you're thinking of Martin Brodeur, Patrick Waugh, Ed Belfour, Dominic Hasek, stuff like that. Archers Urbe is a very underrated goalie that if you've seen him play on your certain team, like the Carolina Hurricanes, like the San Jose Sharks, you know how good Archers Urbe was. And if you're talking about another goalie that could make a Mount Rushmore list, that could make an argument against Cam Ward, Archers Urbe is also one of those as well. So it kind of makes sense why Archers is on there. Now, we get to talk about our last Carolina Hurricane, who is on the Carolina Hurricanes Mount Rushmore, and it just makes sense who this guy is. And obviously, it's the man himself, and it's Rod Brind'amour. I mean, first captain to win the Stanley Cup for the Carolina Hurricanes, what impact he's made with the team. And this is just talking about players, right? Even talking about what he's done as a head coach. I mean, Rod Brind'amour, for what he's done as a player, it goes unmatched to just how he was. And the fact that he wasn't the guy who was going to light the world on fire in terms of points, but he's still talking about Rod Brind'amour and what he's done for the team. That in terms of assists, in terms of points, he had 473 points in 694 games, 174 goals, 299 assists in 10 seasons going from 2000 to 2010. He was a minus 62. He did log over 14,600 minutes with the team, and it was average ice time of over 21 minutes, which is the highest of any forwards. And his shooting percentage was 12.5. Now, in terms of goals, he had 104 on the even strength, 60 power play goals, 10 shorthandeds, and 29 game winners. Back-to-back Selke winner. The accolades just speak for themselves in terms of individually what he's done for the team and for the fact that he was the captain who led that 05-06 team to win their first Stanley Cup in franchise history. And just the fact that he's also been in Carolina, ever since, became an assistant coach. Now he's a coach. His family lives here. He's never really left Carolina. And I don't know what guys can say that they can be a face of a franchise more than just being a player. But like I said, we're not really looking at him as a coach. But even then, you kind of have to figure that into the fact of what his impact is as a player, now as a coach, and everything else he's done. He is the Carolina Hurricanes, and it makes sense why he's on this Mount Rushmore, just of the fact that he should be in the Hall of Fame right now, and it's just insane that he's not still in the Hall of Fame. I've already talked about that in another episode. Make sure to check out the Rod Brind'amour gets snubbed from the Hockey Hall of Fame episode. But for what he's done, it just makes sense why he's up there. And yes, you look at the point totals. Rod Brind'amour is 5th all-time on the team in points. You look at where he's at in goals. He is 11th on the team. He only finished 4 behind Slavan Turgeon, who had 178. And now you look at where he was assist-wise. He was 4th on the team. He just got passed by Sebastian Aho, who has 303. So right now he's going to be 4th all-time. Now, there's going to be some guys like maybe Jordan Staal, Jacob Slavin, who could eventually catch him. But I think, honestly, Rod Brind'amour is going to be top 5 in terms of assists for his entire career and stuff like that, and just of how good he is. And like I said, points-wise, still respectable for what he's done. And that you're talking about a guy who was more of a defensive center more than anything else. He wasn't a guy, like I said, Rod Brind'amour was not someone who was going to light the world on fire in terms of his points, but what he's done on and off the ice. Talking assists, talking just even with his face-offs, he's one of the most deadliest center, face-off guys in the league, and that's why you look at players like Jordan Staal and all them who want to learn from Rod because he'd been there and done that. Like I said, you're talking about a guy who won the Selke back-to-back seasons, and the second time he won it was a season where they didn't make the playoffs after coming off a cup win. So, yeah, if you're talking about the no-brainer of no-brainers, obviously it's going to be Rod Brind'amour and why you should make this, Carolina Hurricanes Mount Rushmore, along with, teammates in Cam Ward and Eric Staal. So, yeah, it's a no-brainer. It just makes sense why he's on there. So, in the comments, let me know what you think. Do you agree with me picking, Eric Staal, Rod Brind'amour, Cam Ward, and Sebastian Aho on the Carolina Hurricanes Mount Rushmore? Is there someone else you could put in there outside of one of those 4 guys? What do you think of the honorable mentions? Do you think that, Jacob Slavin can make a case of being on the Mount Rushmore, or, maybe an Eric Cole, Archers Urbe? So let me know in the comment section on YouTube what you guys think of my list and who would your list be and stuff like that. If you want to let me know about your list on social media as well, you can check me out on X at OneTrueZach. You can check out the podcast at LO_Hurricanes. If you click the link in my bio, you can find all my articles at the Hockey Writers. You also can check out my other podcast, The Surge Cast, where to listen and watch that show as well. Along with this podcast, make sure if you leave a 5-star rating and review on all the podcast platforms, I might just read it on the show for you. And if you're on the YouTube side of things, make sure to subscribe, hit the bell notification so you don't miss an episode. Hit the thumbs up button. Let me know if you liked the episode. Leave like I said, in the comments, let me know what you think about the Mount Rushmore list. Who would you put on it? And make sure to share the podcast with all other people so that way they become everydayers just like you. We are over 920 subscribers. We are on the road to 1,000. And if we get to 1,000, I'll do something special for you guys. But also, big thank you to everyone for getting us over 30,000 downloads all time. I cannot express how much I appreciate everyone's support. It's been really fun taking this over when we were under 10,000. Now we're over 30,000. The very short time we've been here doing this since April in 3 months. So the next goal is 40,000, and hopefully go more as we keep going on about the podcast. But I hope everyone enjoyed the Thursday episode of Locked On Hurricanes. Hope everyone enjoys their Thursday. And until next time, as always, let's go Canes.